Hi, Scary Recaps here. Today, I'm going to explain the movie, The Mortuary Collection, 2019. Beware of spoilers. The film begins with a little boy riding his bicycle and delivering newspapers in the small town of Raven's End. The last house he stops by is an old and eerie mansion. The boy climbs the stairs and rings the doorbell. No one answers, and the boy uses his camera to take a shot. The flash reveals a set of menacing eyes looking at him. The boy is scared, and the door opens. A grim old man stands before him, and the boy runs away. Later, the same man holds a funeral service about a dead boy. He addresses the people in front of him, saying that the life is but a story and that no one really dies. As the relatives of the deceased depart the house, the man is visited by a young woman who tries to open the coffin of the dead boy. The man introduces himself as Montgomery Dark, the Mortician of Raven's End. The girl's name is Sam, and, as it turns out, she has come to apply for the job of mortuary assistant. Montgomery interviews her in his study, and Sam asks him to tell her a dark and twisted story. Reluctant at first, Montgomery agrees to narrate one. First story. A young woman is seen drinking wine in a restroom. She is a pickpocket, and as she checks her loot, she disposes of things she doesn't need. Before leaving, she checks herself out in the mirror, and curious enough, she tries to open the medicine cabinet. In the process, she cuts her finger, but succeeds in opening it. Inside, she beholds something terrible. She struggles to keep the door closed, but the door opens, and terrifying tentacles reach out and grab her. The woman is being pulled to the dark interior, and the tentacles break her spine and kill her, ultimately dragging her lifeless body inside the cabinet. Sam isn't impressed by this story, but Montgomery points to the moral of the story. Sam signs her employment papers, and Montgomery shows her around the mortuary. At the ceremony hall, Sam asks for another story, and Montgomery recites a second story. Second story. A student named Jake speaks to a group of fresh students about the fall of patriarchy and the sexual liberation of both sexes. He is not actually interested in those things, however, as he secretly wants to lure girls into the party he and his friends are having in order to have free and casual sex. Jake then meets Sandra and kind of falls for her. He invites her to the party. Late that evening, Jake says to one of his friends that girls want what boys want. Sandra attends the party, and Jake takes her upstairs. As they make out in his room, Sandra tells him about the missing students, and that she might be a serial killer. For a moment there, Jake looks confused, but Sandra admits that she's joking. Jake then lies down, and Sandra hides something in her skirt. As she comes over to him, she reaches behind her back and takes out some protection. Jake says that he doesn't need it, but Sandra says that she wants to be empowered. Jake agrees, but after a short while, he removes it and has free sex with Sandra till the morning. The next day, Sandra has written her phone number on Jake's mirror and the message, "Call me." Jake, who is not into relationships, wipes out Sandra's number and goes to the bathroom. He throws up looking sick and discovers red marks on his lower abdomen. Jake goes to get checked out, and the doctor freaks out and leaves. Jake checks his charts and sees that he is pregnant. Back in his room, Jake discovers that his belly has grown extremely large, carrying inside him an unknown creature. He searches for Sandra and manages to find her. As Jake leaves to go to Sandra's house, his friends have arranged a surprise celebration for him because he slept with 67 women. As they hand him a banner and lift him up on his chair, Jake's water breaks and a pus-like substance covers his friends. Jake drives to Sandra's house, and her parents take him to the dining room. Jake sits on the table, and he is prepared to give birth. Soon Sandra comes, and Jake accuses her of doing this to him. Sandra, however, says that it is his fault because he didn't want to use protection. Jake apologizes and says that all he ever wanted was to be accepted by everyone. Sandra ignores him and goes to the phone. She calls someone, saying that she will meet him tonight, while Jake goes into labor. Jake worries about how the baby is going to come out, and Sandra's mother replies that it's going to come out the same way it got in. Jake screams as the creature bursts through his genitals and tears apart his belly, eventually killing him. Sandra's mother takes Jake's newborn and puts it in a crib. She starts tiptoeing away, but she accidentally steps on a squeaky toy. The room is full of cribs with babies, who immediately start to cry as Sandra's mother flees, covering her ears. A hideous hand is shown reaching to the wooden bars of one of the cribs, indicating that all the babies are monsters. Sam seems thrilled with this story, admitting that it had everything a good story needs, and more. Montgomery accepts her praise and tells her to be careful. He leaves for a moment and advises her not to touch anything. Sam hears a knock from inside the coffin and puts her ear on it. Sam then witnesses as the coffin starts to descend in an elevator shaft. Montgomery leads Sam to the preparation room. He shows her the dead body of a woman. Montgomery examines the corpse, and Sam takes off the wedding ring of the dead woman, remarking that she was married. When Montgomery asks for the inscription on the wedding ring, Sam replies, "Till death do us part." At this, Montgomery begins narrating another tale. Third story. Wendell and Carol are getting married. As the priests ask Wendell if he takes Carol to have and to hold till death do them part, the church suddenly falls into darkness, and Carol begins to rot. She screams, and Wendell wakes up. Wendell is seen taking care of his sick and catatonic wife. As Wendell returns from the grocery store, he encounters a neighbor of his, an old woman named Mrs. Avery, who talks to him about unimportant things. Wendell returns to his apartment, where every day he has to prepare food for his wife, Carol. The doctor visits the couple and says to Wendell that Carol is a fighter and will probably do better in a year or so. Wendell is distraught as he can't do this anymore. The doctor gives him a set of pills, saying that they will help reduce the pain. He warns him that he should not exceed 2 pills a day, as that can prove deadly, and that also the pills are untraceable. That night, Wendell makes dinner and asks for a sign from Carol, but Carol is totally passive and unresponsive. Wendell then decides to end her life and puts more than 2 pills into Carol's soup. But as he waits for Carol to die, Carol moves her fingers and grabs his hand. Wendell realizes then the tragic mistake he has made and forces Carol to vomit the pills. Shocked by what has happened, Wendell accidentally leaves Carol unattended for a moment. Carol falls head first on an Arctic hare decorative statuette, which pierces her head. Wendell calls the doctor and informs him of what he has done. The doctor advises him to get rid of the body and throw it into the ocean. Wendell spends a moment looking at his wedding photo album before putting Carol inside a box. The container, however, is too small for Carol's body. Wendell takes an electric saw and goes to dismember Carol. Carol, however, wakes up screaming, and Wendell removes the statuette from her head and kills her again? Wendell cuts Carol's legs and manages to put her inside the box. Leaving his apartment, Wendell is forced to take the elevator, but the elevator gets stuck and Wendell panics. Mrs. Avery then comes and informs Wendell that she will call the police. Wendell is frustrated as the box starts to leak blood. He yells in anger and throws his wedding ring at the box, which suddenly unlocks on its own. Wendell goes to see inside when the elevator starts to rapidly move downwards. Looking outside the door, Wendell sees his life with Carol, and as the elevator goes out of control, a deformed Carol exits the box and gives Wendell back his wedding ring. The two of them kiss, and soon after the police arrive. They find Wendell clearly unstable, repeating his wedding vows over and over again. Sam admits that she hates that story, saying that Wendell did what everyone would do and was still punished. Montgomery argues that it is what destiny does and that no one should contradict fate. Montgomery then takes Sam to the basement for the best part of the tour. Sam tells him then that the stories are too predictable. Montgomery says that no evil deed goes unpunished. He pushes the small coffin to the so-called heart of the house and fires up the furnace. As he goes to put the coffin in the fire, Sam reveals herself, saying that she didn't come for the job. She tells Montgomery that bad guys win in the end and admits that it was her fault Logan died. Montgomery then opens the coffin at her request, and Sam tells Logan's story. Fourth story. Sam is watching a TV show about babysitter killers. A little boy, Logan, is sleeping upstairs. Sam then starts cooking and fails to notice a breaking news bulletin about a power surge in the recent area and the escape of a deranged patient from the local asylum. Shortly after, the lights go out and Sam is shocked to see a stranger in the house. She goes to the kitchen to take a butcher knife and protect herself. The stranger, who is bleeding, startles her. Sam wipes his head and the phone rings. Sam's mother is heard screaming about the surge and that a dangerous institutionalized person is at large. Sam looks at the stranger and puts his hand on the meat grinder. She attacks him and a terrible fight ensues. The man succeeds in knocking her out and goes to search for Logan. He fails to find him in his room and Sam attacks him again. For a second time, Sam is overpowered and tries to flee. The stranger catches her and attempts to strangle her, but Sam tells him that he is not a murderer. The stranger agrees and lets her go. He tells her that it's over. Sam says yes and then pushes him off the top of the stairs. Soon, Logan's parents arrive. The stranger is still alive, but Sam comes and smashes his head with the TV set. Logan's parents recognize the dead man as their babysitter, Sam. In truth, as the broken television reveals through another news bulletin, the woman claiming to be Sam is in fact a child murderer. Her real name is Charlotte Gibbons, the infamous Tooth Fairy killer, who eats children up and takes their teeth as charms. At the end of this story, the parents discover Logan's remains in the oven and scream in horror. Montgomery admits that Charlotte was devilish in her narrative. He asks her why she came back, and Charlotte replies that she too has a collection. She pulls out a tooth from the deceased Logan and smashes the coffin shut. Charlotte asks Montgomery to keep her story a secret, and he says there's nothing to worry about. Charlotte, however, doesn't want to risk things, so she stabs Montgomery in the belly. But as she turns to leave, she hears Montgomery laughing crookedly. Montgomery tells her that she has committed a deadly sin. She has underestimated her audience. Montgomery reveals that embalming fluid is oozing from his wound instead of blood, and Charlotte runs away. Charlotte tries to exit the mortuary, but each time she runs to the exit, she always ends up inside again. Montgomery haunts her, and Charlotte ends up in the library. Montgomery knocks his cane several times to the floor. With each knock, a book falls down. Montgomery tells Charlotte that her story is very much alike the rest, and no one can escape fate. Darkness swoops in, and the books on the floor open one after another. Burned figures emerge from the books and attack Charlotte, biting her and ripping her apart. Afterwards, Montgomery is seen stitching body parts together. In his study, he blows at a stuffed butterfly, and it flies away. Walking out the front door with trepidation, Montgomery takes a few steps before stopping. Pain engulfs him, and suddenly he explodes into dust. Charlotte then wakes up, all sewed up and alive. She screams, realizing her horrible destiny. At the end, the newspaper delivery boy takes notes as Charlotte was narrating the story. The boy says that it's time for him to leave, and Charlotte replies, "So soon? I was about to make dinner."